like I'm dyslexic, so dyslexia is the traits of dyslexia is we struggle with words. So anything written, so either writing it, reading it, speaking it, even hearing it to some things and processing it. It's like we don't go down the neurotypical route and we do things in unusual ways.
So how, like, what's the difference between, I mean, obviously it's hard to, it's almost like when I explain ADHD to a neurotypical person, I almost don't have a frame of reference of what a neurotypical experience is. Like, I understand, I can see it outside, I can see it externally, but I can't figure out what their internal experience is, that they can just do shit. Like, I only know my own experience, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I can sort of give vague things like, you know how this happens to you sometimes? Well, that happens to me all the time or whatever. But it's like, I still don't have a real point of reference to fully explain and compare the two states because I've never had a different state. No. But if you were to somehow go down that route, I mean, I know it's very difficult. How would you, because I've always just, you hear about it, you hear dyslexia.
Yeah.
And it's just, you can't write. Like, you jumble your words. Mm-hmm. But like, obviously that impacts you probably in a, that issue with the processing probably impacts you in other scenarios or in other ways as well, right? Like your mental states or your ways of interfacing with the world.
Yeah. I really like what you say about, like, people asked us to explain it, but like, we're sitting somewhere else. We don't understand where they're sitting and they don't understand where we're sitting. And somehow we're supposed to make sense of all of this. Like, it's really hard. And
bring that mic a little closer.
Oh, yeah, no worries.
Yeah. If you sit away, just bring it with you.
Oh, yeah.
It's fine.
Cool. And I think the other thing to bear in mind, again, I don't know about this as much with ADHD, but I know it's similar, is two dyslexics can be different. So they're both dyslexic, but they're both different. And what I do is I explain to people purely about me. So I can read and process that information fairly okay. I can read it, and that I do have a reading age of probably about 11 or 12-year-old. But if I read something, I'm a little slow than someone of my age would be. But the knowledge goes in. Now, if you ask me to read something here and ask me about it, I'll probably be like that. It comes straight out. If you ask me to write about it, it's a train wreck. The words, the information from here to the hand, and remembering the shapes to make all go right. This is working way faster than this. I start getting anxious. So now this just catches fire and decides it's going to work faster to push this along. And this decides to have a meltdown. And that is my thing with dyslexia. Right. It's getting that information out in a written form, which is an issue.
The way you're describing it makes me picture like the way my parents now they've sort of got a lot better with technology, but I remember initially, right? Like, I mean, a few years ago, if I got my dad to type something, he'd have to go A N D, like just one finger, they'd be typing with one finger looking for the next letter. So it's almost like the way you're describing it, it's almost like you're having to process individual letters in a word. Like, like when I think of a word and I'm writing it, I think the word and like subconsciously my subconscious takes over for writing that full word. I don't have to think letter by letter by letter, right? So if I had to think letter by letter, I assume then it would break up my processes for thinking about the concepts or the words that I'm trying to write or anything else at a bigger scale, right?
Yeah.
Is that somewhat accurate?
Yeah, that's close. And like, you know, it's like you explained your dad. He's trying to remember the pattern and the order of the keyboard.
Mm.
And that is what the block is.
Yeah.
Whereas the block for me is somewhere in here, which is different to everybody else. So I'm just checking what I'm going to say is correct. If I agree with it, is my keyboard in my head set differently to everybody else's? And I think it is.
Right.
And now and then, how I connect and move around that is where the
Mm-hmm.
and as soon as that starts, everything starts to slow down.
And then you have emotional reactions based on
And you know, there's like, how can I make this, like, me writing turns into a freaking train wreck. Handwriting is a train wreck. But my hand-to-eye coordination and my skills with my hands, I can juggle. I can manipulate.
Mm.
I can paint. So, like, you know, I've got the control there, but my writing's...
Yeah.
You know, but give me a computer that I can talk to, sweet. If I can talk to it and it types, that's freaking awesome.
Yeah.
If it's got a keyboard...
Because now you're thinking in whole words. You're not having to process shapes and process these individual patterns. Like, yeah.
Give me a keyboard and a computer, that's good. And the spell check is freaking awesome.
Oh, nice.
You know, but even weirder, we bought an old typewriter and it was a Recon typewriter and stuff. And I can even process stuff quicker out on the typewriter, and people around me that know my quirks, like my wife, she can read and interpret my handwriting, but when it's a real train wreck, there's just nothing there.
Can you read it back afterwards, or it's gone?
I can, but sometimes I can't. And sometimes it is like, oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
But normally, if I can pick up the words before, I remember what I was talking about, and then I can say, yeah, that word is cauliflower. Mm-hmm. I've only said cauliflower because there was a shopping list incident the other day and stuff. But on a typewriter, I can type everything out. Things ain't spelt correct, but people that know me can read it far better than my handwriting, and even people that don't know me can read it and go, yeah, I know what it means, just that there's no full stops and every fifth word is spelled incorrectly.
Right.
But it's like, yeah, if I handwrite that, you wouldn't be doing so well.
Right. So, okay, let me ask you this, right? So with ADHD, at least in my experience, and it's same thing with ADHD, right? There's two official classifications. They've changed it a bunch.
Yeah.
They don't even use ADD anymore. They use ADHD PI or ADHD PH. Yeah, which is primarily inattentive or primarily hyperactive. And these are like two sides of the spectrum, but you can sort of have overlap as well. So some people get double fucked.
Yeah.
But they get both. I'm more on the inattentive side, so I don't have problems with standing still as much, even though I bite my nails and I have all these quirks. But like my dad, for example, you try to get him to sit still somewhere. I mean, he'll go in a public setting and he'll talk for people 2 minutes, like he'll talk to someone for a minute. You know, the craziest icebreaker, instant friends sort of type of person. But then after a minute, he gets bored, goes to the next person. Bored, next person. You know, I'm just like looking at him like, this is exhausting, man. Like, you know, for me, the initial, like, you know, the initial minute with like the kind of shallow conversation is the things that I don't like the most. You know what I mean? Like that's what really drains me actually. But for him, it's just, he just needs to be going, go, next, you know? I don't have that. I just can't concentrate. So my mind starts wandering, you know, I start to, you know, and I actually think we were talking about the headphones.
Yeah.
I think the headphones lock me in, which I'm actually really enjoying because I can hear myself, I can hear you, and it's like we're right here. There's nothing else going on, you know. Anyways, it's a bit of a tangent.
Yeah.
But for me, ADHD, it has its negatives, but there's also some things like which arguably are from the autistic spectrum, the obsession. I mean, you know, I can hyper focus on something and get obsessed, and I'll make more progress. I'll outwork anyone in an obsession. Like if I'm obsessed about something, I will take on the challenge to outwork anybody in the world. You know what I mean? But the problem is I can't control the obsession. So sometimes it'll just derail, and all of a sudden I should be doing this, but I'm like 14 hours deep on rebuilding my new board game box. You know, like it's just it uncontrollable at points. So there's positives, but obviously the negatives outweigh it. But there's still these like sort of superpowers that it gives me sometimes. Do you find that it affects, like dyslexia affects, are there any positive things that you've like, or do you think that it's shaped you in a way like maybe your magic or maybe something that makes you think differently about things?
I see dyslexia as a gift, and I see it as an incredible thing. And the negative side of dyslexia is when people have got dyslexia and they can't explore that side of them, and they're being kind of, they're either not aware of it or they're just sitting there going, I'm different, or I'm not them. What's wrong with me? And that's a dreadful place to be. And in my past, I've been labelled as sort of slow, uninterested, not working hard enough, and stuff like that. But
Amen. Amen.
yeah. There's going to be a lot of neurodiverse people going, yeah, that sounds familiar. But the thing is like the positives of it is like, I don't know. I have this creativity, but I think what makes you creative is when something is seen as different. So now if we talk about this neurotypical thing, which, you know, I kind of feel is
it's a strange term because what is typical?
Yeah, I think it's a myth. This is going to sound random. I may explain this, I may not. When I was in a locked mental institute ward in Australia, the therapist there said to me, normal only exists on the washing machine. I was actually there as a visitor. I wasn't there as an inmate, honest.
That's a start to a bit, to a comedy bit right there.
But like people go from A to B and they go in a straight line. I and most dyslexics may kind of walk to B in a wiggly line wearing a hat with ears, you know, like whatever. We do it differently. And that, I think, is what gives us the creativity. And the other thing is I feel that I have a different viewpoint on the world, because what everyone sees as the way and what's there and what's normal, want of a better word, it's like, well, no, it's interesting, it's different. Or it's like, I see something else there. Or I look at it thinking, oh, that's strange. You know? And I think it really does give us that ability to look and interpret stuff differently. And, you know, one thing I can remember is being in a training room, and there was a set of exercises we had to do. And one of them I breezed through, and everyone else in the room struggled. And everyone went, oh, you did that really well, Alan. And I went, yeah. And in my head, and I spoke to someone from afterwards, I said, like, you know, filling that form in that was being passed around with her name and the other information at the beginning of the day was the most stressful thing for me For everyone else, that was just something you do in 30 seconds.
Mm.
It was really stressful for me. I felt I had to do it in 30 seconds. And I took 40 seconds and I got it out and I got it done. But it was stressful for me.
Mm.
This exercise was freaking weird, but it was fun. And they're like, oh no, it was really stressful because it didn't make sense. And the clues said this and this said that. And
you're like,
and
I live in that world, baby.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. It's like, yeah, it was just another clusterfuck for me. It was just another weird pile of nuts, you know. It was just, yeah, that's my everyday. And someone actually said to me, thank you for that, because I've always wondered what it was about and what went on. And now I've seen you sit and easily do an exercise that everyone else has struggled with. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think things like that are the gifts of dyslexia and gifts of these things. You have the ability to interpret the world differently. And because you are just going down different routes, you're going to come up with different answers. And yeah, I get obsessed by stuff. I get ridiculously focused on stuff. I've got notebook on my phone. I've got the camera on my phone. But I'm usually never far away from a notepad and some paper. Because if an idea gets in here, that's it. There's nothing else exists. And I've got to get that idea out on a piece of paper for a sketch, a drawing, a word. It might even just be a set of numbers. And I put it down. Now that piece of paper just sits there. The brain can now think about keeping a relationship, shopping, you know, and whatever. But as soon as I pick that piece of paper up again, it's like, bang, I'm back. And that. But yeah, if I ain't got a piece of paper,
it's like freeing up mental RAM, right?
Yeah. It's like, you know, the old computers that used to only be able to do one job at a time and you used to program them. It's a bit like that, but it's in the sense of, yeah, you get obsessed and you can't leave the idea down. But as soon as it's on a piece of paper, I refer to it as sort of neurons to molecules. As soon as it becomes a physical thing, I can leave it there and think about something else.
Yeah, interesting. You just watched a highlight of the hugely popular Eduard Todor podcast. We got millions of viewers that you've never seen. They're nowhere. They're viewing though. You can believe me on that. Like, follow, subscribe, all this shit, man. Do it. Help us out. If you want to see more like this, press here or here or here. Everywhere. If you want to see the full episode, there's links in the description to the episode and the podcast channel. Go check it out. I'm waiting on you to check it out, man. Go check it out. I'll be here.